Stillman bats that puck to the neutral zone. Here comes Huberdeau with Barkov, 2-on-1. Barkov for Huberdeau, and he scores! Olli Jokinen has company. He and Huberdeau, the all-time franchise scoring leaders now.
Welcome to Project Panthers, a weekly podcast discussing your Florida Panthers. Now, here's your host, Brunswick.
What a week, what a week, what a week. I am your host, Brunswick. The show is Project Panthers, and oh, baby, what a week, what a month it has been in Panthers territory. If you're hearing the sound of my voice, that means you found me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other major podcast platform out there on the World Wide Web by searching Project Panthers. Remember to follow us on all the socials by searching Project Panthers. I love all the interactions I've had with you on Twitter and on Instagram and on the other social media sites, so please keep it going. I just want to keep growing this Panthers community. I've seen some other podcasts pop up as well. Let's just keep growing it, keep increasing that imprint that the Panthers have online. Before I get into the show, I got to give a quick shout out to my beer league team, the Hard Four Whale Tails. Team captain Scotty Kreisa, we are out to a 9-0-1 start to our summer beer league. I managed to score the game winner last night with about 90 seconds to go. Thank God I did, because I totally blew my assignment on the penalty kill on the previous shift that I had that allowed the other team to tie it. Yikes, but yeah, definitely riding high off of that one. Cody and Cloudy getting goals in that game, so just wanted to give a brief little shout out to the boys there. I got to apologize as well. I'm very sorry that I did not do a Tampa Bay Lightning post-mortem series podcast. It was a tough time in my life. I was just a little bit busy. You know, I have the newborn with my wife. Baby girl is about 4 months now. But, life with a newborn is not easy. That combined with the utter disappointment that took place in that series, it just did not combine into a perfect position for me to record a podcast. So I do apologize for that. For those of you that were looking for it, I'm going to do a little bit of brief discussion about the Tampa Bay series, just because I feel like I need to touch on it a little bit. It feels like it was 1,000 years ago at this stage in terms of Panthers news, but still one of those things that needs to be talked about. Like I said, utter disappointment. It was a tough pill to swallow after last year's first round 6-game loss to the Lightning. It seemed like after winning the first round against the Capitals this year, getting over that, first round hump, thought this was the time that they were going to really put it to the Lightning. I wasn't sure if they were going to win it. I did pick them to win it, but I wasn't sure as a fan going into the series. But I don't think anyone foresaw the outcome of Tampa Bay sweeping the Panthers 4-0 in 4 straight games. I mean, the common thought is that the Panthers got Vasilevski'd, right? They just could not get anything past him. Listen, I don't know if that's a valid excuse. The Panthers are one of the few teams in the league that actually has Vasilevski's number. They had that stat last season where Vasilevskiy had only given up 6 goals twice in his last, 100 starts or something. I'm just picking numbers. I can't remember the exact statistic. But it was quite a long period of time, and the team that had gotten him to give up those 6 goals was both times was the Florida Panthers. So, they have his number, so to speak. I mean, as much as you can have a goaltender like Vasilevski's number. So I don't think it's as simple as an excuse as a goaltender playing his best. He did play really well. He performed at a really high level in that series. You could have kind of see it coming a little bit in the Leafs series that they had with the Lightning. Game 6 and 7 in that series, Vazzy was already kind of starting to turn it up, starting to look less human and more like an android. And yeah, I guess he just brought it for the Panthers series. But I still think that, this team really, they stumbled over the Washington Capitals. Without Carter Verhaeghe going absolute beast mode, I don't know if they would have gotten past them. Laviolette kind of had Burnett's number in that series. They looked outcoached and just out strategized in a lot of ways. So, in that sense, in that line of thinking, it kind of makes sense that they got swept by the Lightning because they just did not play the way they needed to. They just didn't look ready for the playoffs. I don't know if that was a coaching thing and getting the boys ready in the regular season leading up to the playoffs. They weren't really playing that many important games later on in the season. They kind of had things wrapped up by the end of March. It's hard to say exactly what the factors are, but, the team just, they didn't get it done. You lose 4 straight to Tampa Bay. You score 3 goals in a 4-game series after being one of the most potent offenses in the last 30 regular seasons in the NHL. Inexcusable. The only time I really saw the Panthers put effort was in the final game 4. And by then it was far too late. They really looked like the better team in that game, and they still lost it 2-0. But they were not the better team in most games this playoffs. And it seems like Bill Zito agreed with me because he made a mountain of changes. Perhaps the biggest turnover in franchise history since Dale Talon's first season when he came in and signed, Fleischman and brought in Versteeg. And, the entire team looked very different. But this is a big overhaul. And the biggest news out of the Panthers territory during this offseason so far, I don't think we're going to get bigger news than this. Longtime Panther, all-time leading goal scorer, all-time leading, point getter, assister, and games played assister. Yeah, that's a word. Jonathan Huberdeau, face of the franchise for almost a decade. He's been traded to the Calgary Flames, along with another big name in Matthew Weegar on the back line. Cole Schwint, Florida Panthers prospect, who saw a little bit of game time this season. Not much, though. And a protected first-round draft pick in 2025. All of that is going to the Calgary Flames for left winger Matthew Tkachuk and a conditional 4th-round pick. This trade dropped last Friday night at 11 p.m. I was watching some TV with my wife after we had put the baby to bed a couple hours before that, and I opened up my phone to a buddy of mine, Jamie, sending me a text message saying, "No way!" Question mark, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point, etc., etc. And in my heart of hearts, I knew immediately that Huberdeau was traded. And I almost knew immediately that it was for Tkachuk without even checking Twitter or anything. I had thrown out this trade proposition a few weeks ago on the Twitter account just to see what people would be interested in. Would they give up Huberdeau and more, because I expected it to be required more to acquire a guy like Matthew Tkachuk at his age. Didn't seem too popular, but here we are a couple weeks later. The trade is official. That night was pretty crazy. I had to tell my wife, listen, honey, I'm going to be a little MIA for the next couple hours, and that was my night. I'm sure the night was similar for a lot of you. To be honest, I think it's a lot to give up for Matthew Tkachuk. I do think he's a fantastic player. I love his game. I love everything he brings to the game. I think he immediately changes this franchise's personality and their persona. Having two top guys like Huberdeau and Barkov, who are, for lack of a better way of describing it, a bit passive, both on and off the ice. Tkachuk is definitely not that guy. He is a balls to the wall, come get some kind of guy. By far his best season in the NHL was this past season, putting up 104 points in 82 games, 42 goals to go in that campaign. Hasn't really reached those numbers before this year. I mean, he's borderline a point per game player since 2018-19 season. I expect him to be similar on the Panthers. He wasn't acquired to match Huberdeau's point total, though. And that was my biggest point when I was discussing the potential trade of Tkachuk for Huberdeau and more was that you are not trying to replace Huberdeau's points because, frankly, the team doesn't really need more goals. The team needed a little bit more grit, a little more tenacity, a little bit more front-end energy, a little bit more pain in the ass to play against kind of stuff, which I think Tkachuk all brings. It's, whether or not a lot of his game was a product of Johnny Gaudreau, we'll see. But it's not like he's coming to Florida to play with a bunch of scrubs. This is a team with a lot of talented forwards that Tkachuk can gel with. He's shown chemistry with Bennett before. I mean, the fits are there. I'm not worried about that. But again, the price was pretty hefty. Jonathan Huberdeau alone, incredible hockey player, right? Matthew Weegar, we all know what he brings to the game. He's a minute-eating defensive defenseman that can actually provide offense in a system like this, where there's a lot of rush play and he can help control the zone exits. Weegar was sort of the punching bag this offseason, or this postseason. He had some pretty bad gaffes, one against Washington and one against Tampa, that essentially cost the Panthers 2 games in the playoffs. Whether or not in the grand scheme of things that would have actually affected play, I don't know. The Game 2 mistake against Tampa Bay in round 2, that was a tough one because the game was tied and we were seconds away from overtime. And, maybe the Panthers lose in overtime and it doesn't really matter. But maybe the Panthers win in overtime and suddenly it's a 1-1 series and, the mental gymnastics start playing with both teams and who knows. But, we were never meant to find out what would actually happen, right? So, again, it's a lot to give up. I think giving up the first rounder, another tough thing to do. Zito was very smart in this, right, to protect this first rounder. So it's a lottery protected first round pick. So if it becomes a lottery pick, the pick will move on to the following year because 3 years is a long time. And who knows, maybe the Panthers will be absolute crap in those 3 by the time that 2025 pick comes around. The reason I think that first round pick was included is because I don't think that the Flames have a realistic shot of re-signing both of these players. If I were to pick out one of them, I think Weegar is the one that stays in Calgary. Although, he is primed to go to Ottawa next offseason and return home. But I think it's just not a lucrative place for them. It's a weird franchise, with the mass exodus that happened this summer with Gaudreau and Tkachuk leaving and requesting to leave, Tkachuk specifically. I don't know what's going on with that franchise. Maybe Huberdeau and Weegar love it there, and they do sign. It's not impossible, but, Calgary isn't... To go from Florida to Calgary, that's a big weather shock, indeed. But weather isn't all that matters, obviously. So we'll see how the teams treat them. I'm sure Calgary is going to do their best to treat these guys like $1 billion and do everything in their power to keep them on board. But that first round pick sort of seems like insurance from the Panthers to Calgary that, hey, you're at least going to get some value back in this if it's just a 1 year for both of these guys, because they are both unrestricted free agents after the end of next season. And I think that factored into Zito's decision and whether or not he could re-sign both of them. Huberdeau was at least going to get $9 million, probably $10 million like Barkov, maybe 10.5. And Weegar, I mean, he's an analytical darling, even though the eye test doesn't always agree with that. He seems to be pretty, he was underrated around the league in the last couple of years. I think now he's a little bit overrated because people have seen his offensive numbers, and I don't think he's as good as people think he is. But he's still going to be due for a massive payday, maybe $7-8 million, like Seth Jones type of money. And that's $18 million for 2 guys. That's tough, And Huberdeau's not getting any younger. He's going to be 30 when he signs that deal. You're signing him for a long-term deal for what could be the later half of his contract that may not age well. Huberdeau's style does lend itself well to aging. He's not doesn't rely on his speed. He relies on his skill and his hockey sense, which never really goes away. Your hands and your sense never goes away. It's all about the feet. And he could play well into his late 30s and be a contributing NHLer. So who knows? Time will tell, right? But I know it was extremely hard to give up Huberdeau. It was sad to see him go. I had such mixed emotions because I do really feel that he's an incredible player and easily a top 5 player to ever put on the Panthers jersey. But hockey's a business, and you got to give to get in this league. And the Panthers did give, but boy, did they get. They signed Matthew Tkachuk to an 8-year deal right off the top. He's going to be a Panther for a while, and I loved seeing his press conference on Monday, talking about the team and his one line about, I hate Edmonton, but now I hate Tampa even more. That's the kind of stuff you want to hear. He's not only going to contribute on ice, but I think he's going to help grow the game in South Florida. And Zito has talked about it. The Panthers as a franchise, they've talked about growing the game in South Florida more. I'm not a local down there, but I would love to see hockey just continue to grow. I love the sport, and I just want it to be more accessible and more available to everyone from all creeds and sides of the society. Everyone should be able to get a chance to put on some hockey gear and try it out, It's how I got to fall in love with it. So I think it's important, and Tkachuk's the kind of guy who will get on a mic and say what he feels, and he doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. And, Barkov, as great as he is, he's not the most marketable guy. That's okay. He's a hockey player. He doesn't need to be marketable, and I don't care about that. But Tkachuk is, right? He is. And that's just a little bonus added feature to him as a player and as a personality in the NHL. And if they lean into him, it could make the sport grow even more than it's already been growing over the last few years. I strongly, strongly believe that. But time's going to tell with this trade whether or not Calgary re-signs one or two of Huberdeau and Weegar. I think that'll determine a lot in terms of how the value goes long-term with this trade. But I think Matthew Tkachuk is the best player in this trade, and I am a firm believer that when you get the best player in a trade, you win that trade, regardless of what you've given up. Now, speaking of giving up, before this trade went down, we had to go through a little bit of traditional offseason hockey stuff, right? We had a draft, there's free agency, all that, right? Right? But, first came the draft. We thought the Panthers might be pushing really hard to move some money around. That was the belief and the talk that, given the cap situation and at the time, Huberdeau and Weegar's contracts coming up next season, the big belief was that Zito was going to push hard to get some money, get some cap space. And it seemed that cap space was at a premium this offseason because Zito wasn't able to move anyone. And we saw some pretty crazy trades out there this year. I mean, Oliver Bjorkstrand was traded from Columbus to Seattle for a 3rd and 4th round draft pick. That is an extremely low price for a player of Bjorkstrand's caliber where, he's bordering on a point per game player and he's very skilled offensively. Yeah, he's not the best defensively, but my goodness, for a 3rd and 4th round pick, it's going to be one of those trades that people look at in the future and say, how did Seattle get him, not knowing the context of Columbus needing cap space for Gaudreau? Those points will be lost to time. But not much happened in the draft. Panthers didn't have their first pick until the 3rd round, so they didn't pick until the 2nd day. They've mortgaged a lot of future over the next couple of seasons, so this will be a common theme for the Panthers come the next few drafts. A couple of the picks I did like were 5th rounder Sandis Vilmanis and 7th rounder Jack Devine. Just from reading up on these guys, I obviously haven't really seen them play, but just from doing some light reading on them, I think they both have a chance to reach the pro level. They seem to have some offensive upside with some defensive, well-rounded game. I think they seem to have a high ceiling, but, bit of a long shot for both of them. I mean, that's kind of the way it goes with 5th and 7th rounders. You never really know. Devine does have the advantage of being in the ever-impressive University of Denver program down in U.S. college hockey, so he'll see some growth as well. Excited to see how this draft pans out. Panthers are really going to have to start hitting on these later picks again because they just don't have those, sort of surefire first rounders. Now, We moved on to free agency about a week after the draft, week and a half after that draft. Panthers were looking to maybe hold on to a couple of guys that they acquired at the deadline, and Claude Giroux and Ben Sherratt. But, I really didn't want Sherratt sticking around, but I really wanted to keep Giroux, even though I knew it was never going to happen. I mean, obviously, keeping Giroux would be wonderful, but I knew it was just impossible. There's no way they could fit him. And Giroux was due for a payday, and he wanted to go home to Ottawa, and that's where he went. He signed for 3 years, $6 million a year. I think he took a little bit of a pay cut there. I think he could have gotten elsewhere, maybe a little somewhere on a different team, but Ottawa gave him the 3-year deal, so he'll go there, raise his family, and retire, trying to go for one last cup. So good for him. Ben Sherratt ends up going to another division rival as well. He goes to Detroit. Good riddance. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. I do not care. I do not like Ben Sherratt. They gave up way too much for him. I hated the trade when it happened, and I hate the trade now. I'm just glad he's, I guess, in the Atlantic Division still, because the Panthers get to play against him a bunch next season. But honestly, Ben Sherratt is garbo, and I don't know how he got a friggin' 4-year deal from Detroit. But good for you, I guess. Arguably, the biggest loss for the offseason for the Panthers was losing Mason Marchment, who had a tremendous season last year. He really grew as a Panthers player. But after some rumors that he was going to go to Carolina, I was really, really not looking forward to Mason Marchment going to the despised rival Carolina Hurricanes. But no, alas, he ended up going to the Dallas Stars, signing an $18 million contract over 4 years. So a nice little payday for Marchie. Mush goes to the Stars. Unfortunately, the Cats could not afford it, a little too rich for their blood. But again, expected. Unless Marchment took a very, very, very team-friendly deal, he was not coming back. And honestly, he deserves it. This guy was plugging around in the AHL for a while. So huge payday for Mush. Noel Acciari also moving on, signing a 1-year deal with the Blues. Cookie gave us some fun memories in the Panthers uniform. Those back-to-back hat tricks. I don't think anyone's ever going to forget those if you were part of the Panthers Nation back then. Marcus Nudivara also, despite appearing to basically disappear off the face of the earth last season, he lands a 1-year deal with San Jose to try and revamp his career with the Sharks after some injury troubles in the Cats. Some other smaller names also moving on. Chase Prisky, vet Joe Thornton still hasn't found a contract, and he might be done in the NHL. I think after last year, it's probably for the best, unfortunately. Jumbo Joe will likely not get a cup unless he moves on to a, front office role or scouting role or something like that. Still not out of the realm of possibilities. And forward Maxim Mammon signed a 3-year deal returning to the KHL. That was one of the first Panthers bit of news in the offseason, losing out on Maxim Mammon. Again, not a superstar player, but I did like the grit and bit of skill he brought to the game. So, got a big payday to go back home, so good for him. Now, the big question going into this offseason, before any of these signings and all those picks and all those nonsense, was the coaching decision. What to do with Andrew Brunette? Do you bring him back and let him go around with the boys again, or not? And I think the team lingered a bit with the decision. And eventually the news was that Brunette was not going to come back because the Panthers were going to go and hire former Winnipeg Jets head coach Paul Maurice. This was a polarizing decision from the Panthers. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people hated it. Personally, I like this move. I don't really like regurgitating coaches in the NHL. I am always a fan of bringing in new blood and trying to see what kind of success someone new can bring to the league. But I did not see that in Brunette at all last season. And I think Maurice is not one of those Lindy Ruffs where, he just kind of bounces around to different team and has mediocre results with everybody. I think Maurice, the tenure he had in Winnipeg, very long time he spent over there coaching, better part of a decade. He had some success with them. He took the Jets to the conference finals a few seasons ago before they lost to Vegas. There was a lot of turmoil in the Jets locker room over the years. There was, the whole group mentality and clique stuff that the Panthers experienced in their own changing room. But with Blake Wheeler and company, there was always rumors of a big clickiness going on. There was the Dustin Byfuglien situation and him never coming back to play. Evander Kane having his, stuff thrown out of the locker room or thrown in the showers and soaked, and just a lot of stuff that on the outside looking in, it's a little bit alarming that the coach doesn't have that under wraps and has his players, on the same page. But I also heard egos were a big problem in that locker room. Maurice still stuck around despite all of that, and he left on his own fruition, which not a lot of coaches do. Almost no coaches do in this league. He left on his own accord, chose to walk away from the Jets, basically said that he's done everything he can with his team, and it takes a big man to make that move. Not an easy thing to do, to walk away from a guaranteed paycheck like that, right? Now, Maurice does rank 7th all-time in the NHL in wins, but unfortunately also leads the NHL all-time in losses with 680. But again, people held on to this number like it was some huge fact. But if you coach in the league a long time, you're going to lose a lot of games. That's what happens. And, Barry Trotz, the guy who won the cup with the Capitals a couple of years ago, and then everyone suddenly thinks he's the best coach ever, he has 670 career losses as a head coach. So just 10. So a bad Islanders season this year and a good Panthers season this year, and suddenly Barry Trotz is number 1 in NHL losses as a head coach. Maurice's style, he's known for playing the grinders and really leaning on his workhorses and his stars. Some of the Panthers signings that we'll get to later on in the episode, they really lean on this coaching style of play. I think Zito's done a really admirable job of getting Maurice the players that he'll need this season, the players that he wants. And again, personally, I am glad the Panthers moved on from Andrew Brunette. I just did not see nearly enough from him throughout this season. They basically looked the exact same way they did when Coach Q was with them. Yet somehow they seemed less motivated when the playoffs came around. Despite facing Tampa again and getting that second shot, they looked less interested. I think Zito did give him a fair shake, but Brunette just did not show that he had what it takes to compete at the level of someone like, Tampa's head coach, John Cooper. And he only really got past Peter Laviolette in the first round because, again, Carter Verhaeghe went beast mode, and Panthers had a couple of clutch goals. They were down 2-1 and almost gave up an empty net to be down 3-1 in the series in that game 4. Okay? So they were dangerously close to being out of that series. Overall, I like the hiring, but I got to approach it carefully. Losing Q sucks. We kind of have to move on from that, but hopefully Maurice can step in and continue the success. Again, losing Q was necessary. I hate how all of that went down. I hate what Q did in that situation, and I hate the Blackhawks for not vetting things and handling their shit. But I'm not going to get into that. So the first free agent signing we saw come in was Nick Cousins signing a 2-year, $2.2 million deal. Cousins is one of the league's best agitators and routinely gets voted one of the best shit talkers in the league by the NHLPA. It's kind of a weird award, but if you've ever played professional sports, that kind of stuff can go a long way to getting in the other team's head. He's got a little bit of a scoring touch, but he's mainly a utility guy that's used in the bottom 6 role, works hard in the corners, can throw the body around when he needs to. Not a huge hitter, but he can hit. But he's a grinder. He's a grinder. He's one of those Paul Maurice grinders. Then Zito also looking to hit another home run with a diamond in the rough. He signs Colin White, a 25-year-old center from the Ottawa Senators. White's had some injury issues over the past couple seasons, hasn't been able to stay healthy, but he had a really great rookie campaign, putting up 41 points in 71 games in the 2018 season. He did not put up 2018 points in 41 games. My numbers got mixed up. Now, I'm sure Zito is hoping for some of the same magic we've seen from the Verhaeghe, Duclair, etc. deals that we've seen the Panthers sign. So hopefully White finds his game again. It's only a 1-year deal, so this is a very obvious prove-yourself contract for Colin White. I think he's going to be put in a position to succeed with the Panthers. They're going to probably play him on those top lines. He's got a scoring touch. I don't see him playing bottom 6 minutes. I see him playing... Honestly, I see him up with Verhaeghe and Barkov in the top line, at least at some point this season. Whether or not that's what Maurice agrees with, we'll see. Veteran defenseman Mark Stahl also signed with the Panthers, a 1-year deal, a depth signing to provide some leadership on the back end. Don't expect too much from Mark Stahl this year. He is, he spent the last few years in Detroit, so we have seen a lot of him. He is slow, but he plays a tough game in front of the net, and honestly, he's better than Ben Sherratt, and he's the guy they probably should have acquired at the trade deadline instead of Ben Sherratt, because he would have cost next to nothing and would have provided a better performance on the ice. Mark Stahl's brother, Eric Stahl, the longtime hated Carolina Hurricane from a Panthers perspective, he's going to join the Panthers on a training camp invite, a tryout, a PTO. So we'll see if Stahl can keep up with the Panthers. He played at the Olympics this year with Team Canada and didn't look completely out of shape and out of touch. He had a season with Montreal the year prior, didn't play last season in the NHL. So maybe he's still got legs and can play that sort of Joe Thornton veteran off the bench out of the press box role for the Panthers this coming season. That was all on the first day of free agency. The next day, there was a little bit of rumors that Rudolph Balcers might be a signing for the Panthers. There was some rumors from Jameson Olive that we'd be signing him, and sure enough, not long after, the rumors came true. Balcers was one of those guys that a lot of people I saw on Twitter targeting, myself included. I thought he would come pretty cheap, and he does, but only a 1-year deal. He drives play well. He's not really an offensive guy, but can he hit? He's a dynamo out there. He plays a very strong bottom 6 game, and again, another Paul Maurice grinder, a guy who makes it hard to play in the corners, and that was one of my points against Tampa, was the team seemed too easy to play against in the corners. Too many converted centers try to play wing and don't know how to grind out. You got to really work in the corners. If you're a winger, you got to work. You got to go in the corners. You got to dig deep. Sometimes you got to get the skate on the puck. You got to just do everything you can to win those battles. And Balcers is one of those guys that can win you those battles, especially on the bottom 6. I think the Panthers' bottom 6 is thicker and juicier than it's been in a long time. And boy, I like it thick and juicy, Who doesn't, right? Now, before the big Tkachuk trade with Huberdeau, that fell down on July 22nd, 22nd. So the Panthers made a couple more signings. They added a couple of former Senators, center Chris Tierney and defenseman Michael Del Zotto to 1-year, 2-way contracts, likely to help out the farm and provide a bit of depth should the injury bug hit the Panthers. Tierney, I don't really see touching NHL ice. He was a pretty serviceable center for a few years there. Good depth guy, but he's sort of fallen off and hasn't really picked up his game since. I don't see him ever cracking the Panthers lineup unless injuries really hit hard. But listen, you never know with Tierney. Maybe he'll bounce back and have a great season. I don't know, but he's a 2-way contract, so I think expectations from both sides are the same. Del Zotto, though, I see probably playing a little bit. He still played some games in Ottawa last season. Didn't look totally out of the loop. We'll see. I like these signings as depth signings, proven NHLers that can step in and probably plug a hole or fill a spot if need be. Now, with all these changes, I got to give my input on this. I don't know what to think, to be honest. It's quite a bit of turnover. As of right now, the Panthers have a full team signed, and they sit around $3.4 million over the salary cap, depending on what website you check. Anthony Duclair is out right now due to a Achilles tendon injury. He's going to be gone until at least January, by the sounds of it. So that will free up around $3 million for the first half of the season. But there's going to be some moving around still required from Zito's end. Not sure what he'll do. I don't think it'll be Hornquist because, again, the cost of trading for cap space right now is insane. But I think a move will have to come somewhere. Overall, about the squad, I feel pretty good. I think that they will take a step back next year. I mean, they won the President's Trophy, so it's not really a shock. Unless you finish first in the league, again, you have naturally taken a step back, right? But I don't see them winning the Atlantic next year. But I see them competing in the top 3 spots. I don't see them being a wild card team. There's just too much still there from last season. I really wanted this team to have more grit and toughness after that horrible performance against Tampa Bay. And with Cousins, Balcers, added to the bottom six with Hornquist and Lomberg already back there, the Cats are going to be a menace. And you throw in Gudas and Tkachuk, and teams are just going to despise come to South Florida to play the Panthers. It's going to be a tough time for anyone that comes into that building. I think the forwards are in the best shape they've maybe ever been. There is depth, there's scoring, there is toughness, there is grit, there is skill, top to bottom. Top to bottom. I see Ryan Lomberg taking another big step this year, becoming an even more essential part of that bottom six with the Panthers. The defense, though. The defense is definitely a little concerning. Matthew Weegar ate a lot of minutes out there, and that's not going to be easy to replace by anyone. The good news is that the Panthers have Gustav Forsling, and he's just waiting in the wings to prove himself as a legit number 2 defenseman in this league, and I definitely think he is. I don't doubt that for a second. He has shown he can step up. When Ekblad went down last season, no, it was not Weegar who stepped up. It was Forsling. I'm talking about not this past season, the previous year when Ekblad went down really early. That was, Forsling was our best defenseman in the playoffs. He was a beast. And he's poised to take that next step for sure. But after that top pairing, it's a pretty significant drop-off. As things stand right now, second pairing, my guess is as good as yours. Maybe they give Lucas Carlson that bump and put him on the second pairing with Gudas. I think, or maybe they put Montreux up there. But again, then you're putting 2 right shots and then 2 left-handed shots on the pairing, right? So if you put Carlson and Gudas together, that's a lefty and a righty, and then you put Mark Stahl and Brandon Montour on the bottom pairing. I think that's a good mix of offense and defense on both those 2 pairings, and whether or not that's good enough to get success in the playoffs, I don't know. Zito doesn't really have much in the cupboard to even offer come trade deadline to beef up this defense if the Panthers need to. So he's in a tough spot right now. Although he has set the team up nicely for cap space next offseason. Cats are going to have a lot of money to spend on players if they need to, but this season is a different story, right? Still got to get through this year. The goal is no longer the playoffs. The goal is now a deep playoff run and eventually a Stanley Cup. The team is now expected to reach the postseason. It's not how it used to be where it was just give us the playoffs, just give us the... We've gotten the playoffs. But will that defense be enough to hold off the ever-increasingly competitive Atlantic Division? Again, I think the Panthers did a really good job of improving in the ways that they needed to. But they still haven't figured out the defense. And at times last year, that was already a bit of an issue without removing Matthew Weegar from the equation. As much as we like to beat on Weegar, he ate a lot of minutes. And that's not easy to replace, no matter what. I like to use him as a punching bag too. I hated those gaffes he made, those terrible, terrible mistakes. But that doesn't erase the 20 minutes he played every night, right? Just something to think about. But that's going to do it for me on this latest episode of Project Panthers. I am Brunswick, your host. Preseason hockey is just a couple months away, but oh God, does that feel like a lifetime at this point. Really excited to see what the team looks like come October. I'm not expecting too many more changes, but you never know with Zito. I might do more episodes throughout the offseason depending on what news does drop. But as always, you can find me on Twitter and all the other social medias by searching Project Panthers Podcast. Remember to follow on or like and subscribe on YouTube. I love getting to know you guys on Twitter and online. Let's just keep growing this community. Whether you disagree with my takes or you agree with my takes, hot takes are always welcome around here at Project Panthers. Go Cats, go. Have a week.